Hi, guys. Welcome to the channel. My name is Sean, and thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to look at Quilting 101. This will be the first of many series for those of you who are looking to start quilting, learn about quilting, and, you know, get involved with quilting. So, I wanted to touch base with you today to talk about some of the top things you should know about quilting. First off, we're going to talk about some definitions, right? So, if you're new to the channel, thank you for watching. Thank you for coming in. If this is your return, thank you for returning. I hope you learned something that maybe no one's ever told you before. That is my hope for tutorials such as this. Now, we will talk about some of the things that I feel like are necessary. I know there are a lot of people who will tell you that knowing the terms isn't important, just doing what you do it is important. But as you start looking at quilting and you start taking it seriously, there are things that you really should know about quilting. So first off, let's talk about what is quilting itself. So, quilting is a term and it is the process of stitching three layers together. Those three layers are your topper, your batting, and your backing. Now, that can be done with a domestic sewing machine very easily. You don't have to have anything special to do that. Now, as you think about it, you've probably seen people stitch a piece of fabric to some batting and they did not have their backing. Well, that's halfway doing it because quilting, as the traditional sense is called, is all three pieces together. You can do quilting with a domestic sewing machine like I have right here. You can do quilting with an embroidery machine or in the hoop. So there is in the hoop quilting. There is quilting as you go, which means you take all three pieces, not two pieces, all three pieces. You put them together. You can run lines down them as you wish. You can draw straight lines, going diagonal. There's so many different ways that you can actually do quilting. Now, that is actually what we call quilting in the quilty world or in these quilty streets, if we will. Now, the second term I'd like to introduce you to is the block. Now, I know you've all heard of quilt blocks. What does it look like? I mean, there's so many things. This is an actual quilt block. A block is a basic unit of quilt top. So basically, you make different pieces, you put them together by sewing them. That forms your block. So it's a basic unit of fabric known as a block. So this is one unit. Now, blocks come in so many different forms. I have several different books that I'd like to show you that do have different blocks. This is a different type of block right here. There are, oh my God, there's so many blocks. As a matter of fact, this book has 100 different blocks in them. So blocks come in all forms. You can make There's so many different names for the blocks. There's squares, there's triangles, there's rectangles. I mean, there's octagons, there's blocks on blocks on blocks. So many different types of blocks that you can have. So, blocks are limitless. So, you can definitely have all the blocks that you like. Now, let's talk about fabric, right? So there's a lot of different things you can use. There's a lot of different ways. I'm going to add another camera so that you can see some different things. So we're going to talk first about the fat quarter. I know you've all heard of a fat quarter. What is a fat quarter, you ask? Well, a fat quarter is a piece of fabric that measures approximately 18 by 22 inches and it's a cut from a half of a yard of fabric. So they cut from a half a yard of fabric, then they split that half vertically. It's a staple when you start talking about quilting and fabric pieces. So let's take a look at a fat quarter. Normally, you'll see your fat quarters rolled up. In most of the quilt shops, they'll be just like this. And when you open it up, it should measure 18 by 22. So this right here is a fat quarter, and I'll hold it up so you can see it here. It's a fat quarter. It's a fat quarter. They come in all shapes and sizes. You can even go to the fabric store and ask you can actually ask them to cut you a fat quarter out of fabrics. Now, most fabric stores will already have them cut for you so you can just pick them up. Another thing to think about when you're looking at beginning quilting and looking at the terms is what fabric do you want to use? And as you're getting ready to do that, understanding what happens with these fat quarters. So there is the next term we want to talk about is the salvage, which is spelled Selvage, or some people pronounce it salvage, Selvedge. So either way, the salvage of fabric is literally, let me see if this has a salvage. Yep. I think this has one, but it's hard to see. So let me get another piece of fabric. I have another piece of fabric here, and I will show you what that looks like. So the salvage edge of the fabric, it is the tightly woven edge of the fabric, sorry. It is the edge of the fabric. It's not usually included in your quilt block, but is the key to understanding the grain and the direction of the fabric. So, as you see right here, it has the writing on it and it has an edge. And this right here is also the salvage of the fabric. And you can see it has writing on it, and on mine, it frays just a tad. So there's just a little bit of fray on the fabric, but it is right here, and you can clearly see, excuse me, you can clearly see that it has like little fringes or something on the edge, but that is called the salvage. Now, I also mentioned grain, right? So there is what's called the grain line or the direction of the thread in the fabric. So that's very important because you have the straight grain, which is parallel to the salvage. So this is called the straight grain. It is parallel to the salvage. And then you have the bias grain, which is diagonal and how the fabric stretches and it behaves when piecing and how it behaves when piecing. So again, you have your straight grain and then at a diagonal here you have your bias. So if you try to pull on your straight grain, you don't get anything from that. But if you try to pull on the bias, well, on the bias, it is definitely stretchy. So if you look at, let's focus in on this heart right here. If I pull on it, it's gonna stretch. But if I pull on it on the grain, it's not, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening there. So again, on the grain, nothing happens. On the bias, it stretches. Okay? Grain line, bias. Now, all right. So let's recap of the things that we've looked at so far. We've talked about quilting. What is it? It's all three pieces, right? Yep, all three pieces. Then we've talked about the grain line, we've talked about the salvage, and we've talked about a fat quarter. So next, oh, we've also talked about our block. So that's our top 5. That's the first 5, okay? First 5 things. All right. So hang in there. If you're new to the channel, I'm Sean, and this is Go Savvy Designs. I'm here to teach you about all the quilty things. We sew, we laugh, we have a great time. We have Sunday Fun Day. So if you've never joined our Sunday Fun Day, Sundays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, join myself and Miss Linda of Crafting Cousins. We're always having a great time doing something. So that's on every Sunday at 6 p.m. All right. So up next, stay tuned, hang in there because there's a lot to learn about quilting. All right, next thing to know about quilting is what is binding. Okay, so when you are done putting those 3 important pieces together, that is your top, the quilt top is what you sew together to make your pieces for the quilt is considered your quilt top. Then you have your batting. Batting is in the middle. And then you have your backing, which is going to be the back of the quilt. All right. So um, when we take a look at the binding, what is binding? So binding normally is 2.5 inches. It's literally the finished edges of your quilt. How do you want the edge of the quilt to look? The binding is sewn around the outer edge to enclose all the edges and add durability to your quilt. Okay, so let me show you. This is my little mini quilt or table runner. And on this little mini quilt, we have our binding. And so this is the edge of the quilt. The edge of the quilt is the binding. Okay? That is the binding. Now, there's also something called sashing. Sashing is, where's my little book? Let me grab the book again. So sashing is the strips of fabric sewn between the blocks to separate them and add a visual space. So let's find, here we go. So this would be the sashing. So it is in between to add a visual space. Let me find another one. There's so many. There's so many. You can put your sashing. Um, you can make some beautiful sashings. So look at this. So see this right here? They've added some beautiful detail to add sashing. So sashing is literally fabric between the blocks. So if this is your block right here, you can add some sashing in there. Now let's go to, so you have binding here. This is around the block. Let's see. I need an actual quote. So give me 1 second. Let me grab one other book and I can show you some sashing. Let's do, I'm quite sure in our 3-yard quilts here, we have lots of sashing. So let's look at one of these. I'm let's see which one she added some sashing to. Okay, here's one. So right here, this beauty has sashing added on the outside. So there is sashing on the outside here. There's a border, and right here there is her binding. So binding, a border, some sashing. It adds visuals to the block. Let's see. Can you see it? There is sashings, borders, and this book, for those of you, is Curve Appeal. So this is Curve Appeal with Fabric Cafe 3-yard quilts. And the designer, this is Matt Cox of MA Couture Crafting. And she does a lot with in the quilty space as well. So Fabric Cafe, 3-yard quilts. And that was how we look at sashing, right? So now there is something also within our quiltings that we call chain piecing. So say for instance, you had a lot of blocks you were trying to sew together. So say when I was sewing all of these together, I wanted to do something called chain piecing. All that is a technique that where quilters sew one piece after another piece without cutting the thread in between. It just saves time and thread. That's all it does, but it's a really good technique that you can actually sew together um, pieces to save time. It's called chain piecing. All right. The next thing that we want to look at is your seam allowance. Now, I know everybody's heard about 1/4, 1/4, 1/4 seam allowance. And all it does is articulate the seam allowances and the essentials for blocks to fit together correctly. So when you're thinking about making a quilt, it is very important that you it's very important that you know what the seam allowance is, because when you start reading patterns, for example, and we will do that, you will need to understand what seam allowance they're asking for. There are things that you can use to help you on. There's a 1/4 inch foot that is used to help you. There's also a 1/4 inch on your machine that should be able to help you. But just in case there isn't, there's some washi tape that you can purchase that actually has the 1/4 seam allowance on it. And I use it on my machine all the time. So this is the tape. It has 1/4 written on it. It also um, helps you to line it up. So you can line it up on your machine and just lay this washi tape down so that you will know where 1/4 is on your machine. If for some reason 1/4 does not show up properly or where you can actually see it and guide by it. So it's kind of important and it helps. So when you're putting together your pieces, what it helps to do is to make sure that as you're putting it together, it can potentially end up in a square and you can have the seam allowance ensures that you have the right thing. So now, for example, if you were to, if I were sewing together these two blocks, I want to make sure that I am going to sew them on 1/4, because if I decided to just come instead of like if I just willy-nilly decided that, oh, I just need to sew anyway, or I'm just sewing however I want to, let me get a ruler. If I just decided to sew however I wanted to and I didn't use the 1/4 as they said, then I might start sewing somewhere way off in here. And now if I started sewing way in the middle here somewhere, that's gonna make my quilt way off, and now I've wasted material. When in fact, if I wanna do a 1/4 inch is right here. You see how much different that is? So if I'm using 1/4 inch as my guide, then I'm only going to be sewing right there, and I will be sewing right on this, right here. That's 1/4. Now, if I decided to come in here, I'm wasting fabric now. Now I'm just making a mess of the fabric that I have because I'm coming into my design. versus when I'm using the right 1/8, I basically, I mean, quarter inch, I don't hit my design. Everything is going to look just great when I flip it over. It's going to make my design look super nice. I won't be messing anything up and it would look really good. So you got to make sure that you understand in your pattern that it says, if it says you need to do on a quarter inch seam, which means 1/4, most of the time it will look like a fraction and it will say 1/4, which means a quarter inch seam. Okay. Now, next, one of the most important things that you can do is your middle layer. Oh my God, batting. The batting is the most important thing that helps to make your quilt a success. Understanding what batting you're going to use, monumental. It is monumental. The batting is the middle layer of the quilt. It's sandwiched between your quilt top and your quilt backing. It gives the quilt warmth and dimension. It comes in cotton, polyester, wool, bamboo, and different blends. So it is very important to understand the batting that you are using because as you start quilting, the batting is going to make sure that you have the right quilting depth, that feel that you want for your quilt, the fluffiness that you want for your quilt. It makes a big difference. Now, the one thing that I will tell you about batting is you need to read the instructions on the back of the batting because sometimes it will tell you prior to quilting, you should open the package and let it stay open for 24 hours or more sometimes just to allow the batting to puff out or expand to be the batting that it is supposed to be based on what you read. So make sure that you read the back of the batting to instructions to understand if it's something that you can use immediately or you have to lay it out so that it can breathe. Now I know my batting, for example, when I get ready to use it, it says to open it up. Mine says to lay it flat and it can breathe and open it up. So depends on the type of batting that you are using, but make sure you read the back of the batting so that you will know about it. Okay? Now, let's see. I think we have covered all the 10 things that I wanted to talk about quilting today, but I want to give you one extra thing, okay? So, here's the extra thing in quilting. Take your time. It's not a race. I don't understand they have the jelly roll races, but take your time because as you're learning, give yourself some grace. It takes time to understand how to get these corners lined up so that your quilt blocks look super cute and nice. That takes time. Cutting your fabric takes time. Sewing your fabric takes time. So if I don't tell you anything else, take your time because it isn't a race. But if you want it pretty, because of course we want it pretty, who doesn't want a beautiful quilt? Then it takes some time. So please take your time, enjoy the sewing process because it's there. Our grandparents and aunts and whomever got you interested in sewing really loved it. I bet they did. So all I have to say for that is take your time. So we talked about 10 things, y'all. We talked about 10 things. I'm super excited. I'm super excited for you to go on this quilting journey with me. I have been quilting for several years. I own a long arm. I do all the quilty things, although last Sunday, which would have been the Sunday before the 1st of May, my quilting machine was acting amuck, but it is back on track and doing the things she's supposed to do. But I wanted to just say, make sure you understand the craft you're in. I get it. I get it. We wanna move fast, we wanna jump in and do all the things, but quilting has been around for centuries. Centuries. Do not disrespect your grandmother, my grandmother, and all of our grandmothers or grandfathers because there are some men that can sew these ladies under the table. So let's do what we want to do with this, but also be respectful of the craft because it has been around longer than all of us. And the thing about it to me is you are making something beautiful to last a long time. And in order to do that, take your time. It's a great thing. And I absolutely love it. So, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you joining me, coming along with me on the quilty journey. It's going to be awesome. Welcome to my sewing room. If you haven't seen my sewing signs, check them out. They're on my website, GoSavvyDesign.com. Oh my God. I cannot wait to see what you are going to make with your first block. Thank you again for joining, listening in on all the Quilty 101 terms. I'll be back. We'll talk again some more about more of what you need to know in quilting. So, this is Quilting 101, lesson number one. If I can't offer you anything else, take your time, enjoy the process, and go sew something. Quilt it up, thread the needle, use the threads, become a part of our thread group by joining the we have a Facebook group. So join us. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that thumbs up and come back later because there's more to know about quilting. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.